So the reason I show you that is I'm not just an NPC that steps up in front of you and speaks. Like I'm not like an interactable character in whatever video game you play that you can like hit a button and I'll wave or hit a button and I'll read the Bible. Okay, I'm a real person, and so I wanted you to see the photos of my family, my life, so you know something about me. And now I just want to tell you my story, and I hope that there's something in this that you can identify with. There's something in this that you can see yourself in. My life is by no means like a dramatic life, but there's a lot of evidence of God moving and working in my story. And so I hope that you can hear that. And as you're listening, I want you to be thinking, how has God worked and moved in my own life? All right, so pop quiz. Does anybody remember? I just said what state I'm from. Can anybody throw that out? Oh, yeah, I was going to point at somebody, but yeah, Georgia. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm from Augusta, Georgia. Does anybody know there's a famous event that happens at Augusta every year? Does anybody know what it is? The Masters. Yes, the Masters, the golf tournament. Has anybody watched the Masters before? All right, I had a really special job in high school. I worked at the Masters golf tournament. I got to be on the course, work the tournament. Does anybody want to guess what I did at the tournament? A caddy would be incredible, but no, it's the worst possible job you can imagine. Yep. No, that also would have been cool because I would have been on TV. Clean what? Clean pool. No. What'd you say? Anybody? I worked in the bathrooms. My job at the Masters was to work in the men's restroom between holes 8 and 18. And so while Tiger Woods was teeing off outside my door, I was cleaning up pee that was all over the floor. It was a terrible job. I did that for 2 years, but I grew up in Augusta, Georgia. My parents both were pastors. So I grew up going to a small country church out by a lake. There were beautiful pine trees. Oh, it's like this mythical land for all of you lizards out there that are from Tucson. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, like out about an hour outside of Augusta in this beautiful lake town, this church that was started in 1820. My parents were pastors at this church. And as I grew up, I thought that I really loved Jesus. Genuinely. I would have told you if you'd asked me when I was 10 years old, 9 years old, what's your dream job? I would have said to be a pastor someday. But I had no concept, no real idea of who Jesus was. I had been baptized when I was 7. The joke that I typically make is that I just really wanted the mid-service snacks that they offered once a month, the communion. Thanks, Daniel. Tough crowd. I really wanted the mid-service snacks where you get the little snack of bread. My brothers and I actually used to go out and we would line up all of the grape juice cups and we would see who could drink. This is so heretical and terrible. We would see who could drink through all of the communion grape juice that was left over the fastest. And so we would just like throw back communion grape juice for like 30 minutes after church. So I grew up in the church. I knew all of the right answers. My parents were incredible. They loved me a lot. They raised me to love Jesus. But when I turned 11, so I was in my 6th grade year, my brain stopped working. And that happens to most 6th graders. Your brain just starts to not work anymore. But for me, it wasn't in the usual ways. My brain just stopped operating how it should operate. And instead, the chemical that gives you like some peace, makes you feel okay, just stopped working like it should. And so I really started to struggle with what I didn't know until I was like 20, but I really started to struggle with depression. I had this like darkness that was around me at every moment of every day. I would wake up, I would go to school, and I would hate everything around me. And part of it was just being an angsty teenager. But part of it was my brain was revolting against me. I would wake up, I would come into school, and I would just be angry at everything around me. And then I would go into church, and the thing that I used to really love, I would come in and I just had this loathing, this anger for God. I didn't want anything to do with God, because if God truly was what my parents had told me he was, why would he have created me to feel this way? If God really was who he said that he was, he would never let my brain make me feel like everything was awful all the time. And so for all of middle school and a lot of high school, that was like the constant refrain. God doesn't actually care about me. And the funny thing is, when we start to ascribe things like that to God, we're going to then put that on other people. And so my parents got a lot of the brunt of this. I've apologized. I've offered to pay them a lot of money in like reparations for how terrible I was as a teenager. But a lot of it was because I saw God as this angry father who didn't care for me. I never stopped believing he existed. I just didn't want anything to do with him. And I started taking that out on my parents. And I started taking that out on my siblings. And I started taking that out on my friends at school and the people around me. I was a miserable person to be around because I just couldn't get to a place where I realized that God actually cared for me. And so this continued throughout middle school. And in middle school, I got my first iPod Touch. Do you guys, anybody know what an iPod Touch is? Yeah. So this was pre-iPads. I didn't have an iPad. I didn't have like a smartphone or anything like that. I didn't even have a phone. I just had an iPod Touch. And when I got that device, it was pretty cool. Like Fruit Ninja had just come out, so I was like learning how to play Fruit Ninja and the Bloons Tower Defense. Any Bloons Tower Defense fans? Yeah. So I started playing these games and I started doing that. And then this device that I had quickly transitioned into being an introduction into something not very wholesome. And so when I was in 8th grade, I started watching porn for the first time. And this became a thing that just consumed the entirety of my life in middle school. And I know that this is an awkward thing. We don't like when that word gets brought up. But if statistically speaking, 80% of you in here struggle with that. And this is not just focused on the guys. This is everybody. 80% of us in here struggle with that. And so the reason that I bring this up isn't to make you feel uncomfortable, although I feel like I have done that also. The reason that I bring that up is because you need to understand that this isn't something that you're struggling with in an isolated way. This is not new to you or new to your generation. This has been around for a long time. And so I started to struggle with that, and that caused me to go deeper and deeper into this pit of self-hatred. And I felt that day in and day out. I felt awful, and I hated myself, and I kept taking it out on the people around me. And then when I got into high school, my sophomore year of high school, I started hanging out with some friends. I played tennis at school, but all of my friends were baseball players. And so I started hanging out with my friends who were baseball players, and they introduced me to a whole different lifestyle where I could get out of my house, I can go have fun with friends, but having fun with friends included drinking a lot and smoking a lot of weed. And so I transitioned from hiding myself in my house to now living full on this party lifestyle where I was engaging in all of these different things. And at the moment, I just thought, man, what a good time. Just enjoying high school, like what a blast. And as I look back on it, and I came to realize later down the road, what I was doing was I had internalized this self-hate and this shame so much that I was looking for any avenue that I could that would help me cope. Anything that would numb me, anything that would make me not have to feel for just a little bit so that I didn't have to feel with this self-loathing, this hatred of myself that I had like brought up in my own heart. And so that continued for my sophomore year into my junior year. That kept going on, and I kept living the party lifestyle. I kept doing this most weekends, going out with my friends, doing all of this stuff. And then at the summer after my junior year, and this is deeply ironic, I got a job working as a summer missionary, which is hilarious. I didn't care for Jesus. I liked to smoke weed. I liked to drink. I liked to party with my friends. But they said, hey, we'll pay you to go live in California for 12 weeks. And I was like, say no more. I'll run a vacation Bible school. I'll do whatever you tell me. You want me to like put on the white shirt and the tie and the little name tag? I'll do that. Northern California for 12 weeks for free? Yeah, absolutely. And so I went and I was traveling around and I started to realize I was really good at pretending. I was a good missionary. I was pretty good at it. And we did all these VBSs. The kids loved it. Like we had a lot of people come to know Jesus, and all of it was fake. All of it for me was totally performative. I had zero desire to actually care about Jesus or for these kids to actually understand who Jesus was. Instead, I just wanted to hang out in Northern California with some friends and just go around and have fun. And so that's what I did. I was performative. For that whole summer, I did that. And then I came home. The night I came home, I got home early in the day. The night I came home, I snuck out of my house, went to a party, and then got high and drove myself home. And when I drove myself home, and I snuck back into my house, and I got back into my room, it felt like I got hit with an absolute tank. I was sitting on my floor, weeping, crying, and I had no idea why. I just had a great time hanging out with my friends, and I got home, and I just felt so gross. And I couldn't tell you any more than just use a word. I just felt so upset with myself. And I didn't know why. And so the only coping mechanism I'd ever learned that wasn't unhealthy was to just pray. I didn't really believe Jesus cared for me, but at least he was someone who would listen and wouldn't take my car keys. And so I prayed. And I was like, God, I don't know what you were thinking building me this way. I don't know what you were thinking, creating it to where I just every day wake up and just despise myself. I don't know why you created me where I can't seem to control myself ever with anything. Why have you made me this way? And in that moment, I was laying on my floor. I was so upset. I was really struggling inside my soul. And I just felt this urging to go to sleep, which is really anticlimactic. But it was just to go to sleep, to rest. And so I did. I went, laid down, and I woke up the next day, probably at noon, like a good high school senior. And I woke up, and I had this feeling that I needed to pray again. And so I did. I sat back down on the ground, and I kept screaming at God in my brain. Why would you do this? Why would you make me this way? Why would you make it to where I can't love anyone? Yada, yada, yada. I just went on and on and on. And I was there for 3 hours, just angry, pushing against God. And at the end of that, I had this realization. I'm not actually angry at God. I had told myself that for years, that I hated God, that I hated what he had made me. And the reality was, I just felt so alone. I just felt so alone. I didn't feel like anybody cared for me. I didn't feel like anybody actually loved me. And in that moment, I realized God wasn't the problem. It was my perspective. I was looking at everything in the wrong direction. And so that night, I had this moment with God where I was like, you know what? Maybe you are who you say you are. I don't know. But if you are, show me. Because I can't do this on my own anymore. So if you are who you say that you are, show me. And you guys, this is maybe a life tip. If you're going to test God, if you're going to say that to God, be prepared for whatever it is that he decides to do with that. I didn't say show me a sign. I didn't say make me joyful. I just said, show me. And he did. We went, I was a musician in high school, and I got asked to go on this trip to Nicaragua, which is a country in Central America, and I was helping play guitar for this worship band that we were doing a medical camp down there. And I still was wrestling with this, still wanting God to show me something. And on that trip, I realized a couple of things. Number one, I was way less alone than I first thought I was. I was surrounded by this group of people who came alongside me, who cared for me, who loved me. There was this guy who ran the eye clinic in Nicaragua. He had moved from the States, was down living full-time in Managua, which is the capital city. And we were hanging out in the eye clinic. And this guy didn't know me from anybody. He had never met me before. And he saw straight through all of my pretending. And he sat me down at dinner that night. And he was like, Andrew, I just want you to tell me what's on your heart. What's up? I know something's wrong. Just tell me. And so I did. We spent 2.5, 3 hours, me just telling this guy everything that I was feeling. And at the end of it, he didn't say anything profound. He just said, yeah, that's really hard. But you're not by yourself. And you're not alone. I'm here. I'm with you. I care for you. I love you. And I went back to my hotel room that night, and Jesus did a work in my heart, and I came to love Jesus. I came to realize that the only thing that had been holding me back from truly experiencing God was my own fear that he would require of me more than I wanted to give. And so I did. I put my faith in Jesus. I started to follow him. Now, the hard part about that was all of my friends were potheads. Everybody. I didn't have a single friend that went to youth group with me. I didn't have a single friend who was just a regular dude. All of them were partiers. And so I had this like really great plan. I was gonna win over all of my friends for Jesus. And then I went to my first party and it went horribly wrong. And I came home and I was like, what the heck, God? You wanted me to go here so I could save all these people. And then the lesson I learned was, no, I wanted you to go there to see that these people don't actually care for you. You need to surround yourself with people who care for you. And so I started to get more involved in church. I started to get good, godly Christian friends who cared and loved about me and discipled me and mentored me. My whole senior year was just a moment of growth. And the verse that was like my theme verse for all of my senior year of high school was John 3:30, which says that this is John the Baptist talking, but he says, he must increase, meaning Jesus, but I must decrease. And that was my whole senior year, was just me figuring out, okay, how do I decrease? God, show me how to be less. Show me how to be less in your way so that you could be made much of. And so senior year was all this figuring out, what does that look like? But there was still this nagging shame in the back of my brain. I still struggle with the same things. I still dealt with the same sins. I couldn't figure out how to get out from underneath those things. I had this shame wrapped up in me. I went off to college, started working for a church, started serving Jesus in a lot of really cool ways. And this story really stuck out to me. There's this parable that Jesus tells, and he basically describes this guy who's wandering around in a field. And he finds, buried in a field, this incredible treasure. And his response, you might know what his response is? Sell it all. Get rid of everything and buy the land that has the treasure. He says, this is what the kingdom of God is like. And I remember reading that as like a junior in college, being like, what do you mean? This is the kingdom of God. What do you mean that the kingdom, what God is building here, is of more value than what I want? At that point, I thought I was gonna be like a musician professionally, which was a silly dream. I'm nowhere near good enough to do that. But I thought, I'm gonna go do this music thing. I'm gonna move to New York, figure that out. And this passage struck me in a crazy way where I started to realize that who God is more valuable than anything else. To pull all of this together, because I know I've been sharing for a while. So I want to pull all of this together, and then I want to connect it to where I hope that you can see this in your own lives. What I started to realize was that I had made an idol out of fighting these sins that kept cropping up in my life. What I had done is I had made fighting whatever the sin was, whether that be stuff on my phone, whether that be drinking, whether that be smoking, whether that be gossiping, whatever it is, I had made that the centerpiece of my life. And what God was telling me as I read that passage was the most important thing, it's not fighting sin. It's not getting over the things that are plaguing you. It's caring about what is the kingdom and how can I invest myself in that kingdom? How can I work to make that kingdom a reality here? What does that look like? And so here's how I want to connect this for your lives, because I could go on and on. God has done a lot of incredible things in my life, but here's how I want to connect it to you. I would guarantee there's a lot of you in this room right now that are filled with shame. You are ashamed of whatever it is that is happening in your life, and it feels like it is suffocating. It feels like there's no possible way of moving out of that shame into freedom. Whether that be sin, whether that be circumstances that you're walking in, whether that be suffering, whether that be struggles in your life, whatever it is, you are suffocating in shame. And the message that I want you to hear tonight is let go. I never would have been able to follow Jesus if God hadn't done a work in my heart to help me let go of all of this shame and all of this anger that I had built up. Living the Christian life isn't about beating sin. Living the Christian life is about experiencing Jesus. And we can't do that when we allow shame to run everything in our lives. The second thing is this, guys, Jesus is better. I've experienced a lot in my life. I've done a lot of stupid stuff. I've pursued contentment and joy in a lot of areas, and I can promise you, there is nothing better than Jesus. There isn't. There's no drug, there is no activity, there is no way that you're going to find fulfillment or joy or identity outside of Jesus. There is nothing better than Jesus. And what I don't want you to hear is life is always good with Jesus, because it's not. But it's always better. There's a quality, there's a fulfillment that comes from knowing that God who spoke and the mountains leaped into existence, that the God who looked out into a blank canvas of a universe, breathed out, and the Milky Way erupted into being, that God stoops down onto your level and says, I care for you. There is nothing better than that. Nothing in the world. And so wherever you are tonight, whether you're struggling with sin, whether there are life circumstances that just feel so oppressive and feel like there's no way out, there's no way that you're gonna have joy or satisfaction again, or maybe it's suffering. I don't know what you're going through, but here's what I want you to hear. You do not need to have this shame drive you into a pit, and Jesus is better than anything else that there is. There is nothing better than Jesus. And so what we're gonna do tonight's a little bit different. You don't have small group questions, you don't have anything like that. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna pray here in a minute, and we're gonna go to small groups. When you go to small groups, what I want you to do is I want you guys are gonna pair up, and you're gonna talk through how has Jesus been faithful in my life. I'm also gonna do announcements here in a second, because I'm realizing that I totally forgot to do announcements. Yeah, I did. That's true. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna pray. We're gonna do some announcements. I'm gonna send you to small groups, and I want you to be talking through how have you seen God be faithful in your life. That's not gonna take you the whole time. So your small group leaders know what comes after that, but I want you guys to lean in with your friends and talk about how has God been faithful in my life. All right, let me pray, and then we're gonna talk through a couple things. Jesus, we thank you that you're better, that there's nothing greater than you. God, that there is no suffering, that there is no shame, that there is no sin that can overwhelm you, that can overcome you, that can beat you. But instead, you are the one who overcomes all things. You are the one who calls us out of sin, out of shame, and into freedom. Jesus, we thank you that you have worked that in our lives. For those of the people in here, God, that don't know you, Jesus, would you call them out of their sin? Would you call them out of their shame so that they could know you for the first time? For those in here who do know you, Jesus, that are struggling, that don't know where to go, don't know what to do, don't know how to exist, Jesus, would you call them into freedom? God, would you call them into the fulfilling life, God, that you promise us? Not a life that is easy, not a life that is rich, not a life that is healthy, but God, a life that is fulfilling, that is full of worth and value. God, would you call these students into that tonight? Jesus, we ask all this in your name. Amen. All right, hang tight. I would drop the ball. We're gonna do announcements. It's kind of a buzzkill, but that's all right. All right, does anybody know what this Sunday is? Yes, SM Takeover. Okay, here's the deal. This is our chance to show the rest of the church what we're about. Now you may be thinking, what are we about? That's a great question. You guys should come talk to me about that. You should talk to Mary Nell about that. We'd love to talk to you. Seven would love to talk to you about what SM is all about. All right, but this is our opportunity to show that to the rest of the church. So here's what we need. We need at least 8 people per service to greet at the doors, all right? So if you are interested in doing that, I want you, after I dismiss you guys to small groups, to come up here to the front and let me know. All right, we're gonna put you down on the list to serve, and we'll give you some details about what time you need to be here, all of that stuff. You could do one service, you could do both services. We need at least 8 people for both services. All right, make sense? Give me a thumbs up if you're with me. All right, word. Okay, everybody, wear SM shirts on Sunday if you're gonna be here so that we can represent. All right, so make sure you're wearing those shirts so that people know who you are. If you're able to stay for both services, we would love for you to be in here for both services so that we can all sit together. Part of this is about showing the church what we're about. Part of it also is we want the church to know that we, like, who we are. We wanna put faces to this nameless force that is SM, that is, I think the old people are really excited to see you and who you actually are, okay? So come wear your shirt. If you can be at both services, that'd be awesome. All right, 2 more things. Fundraisers are happening now, okay? If you have M&Ms that you want to turn in, like the tube of M&Ms, we can do that. Marinelle will be outside afterwards to be able to grab those. If you want to grab some M&Ms, empty out the M&Ms, and then get people to bring back money, right? Is that how it works? Yes, perfect. I'm still learning. Then you could come check those M&Ms out with Marinelle afterwards as well, all right? Did you guys see us out there after church today? Okay. We're doing an envelope fundraiser right now. It's the best. It's like the most low impact fundraiser for you ever. You just hang out there for like 5-10 minutes and just ask people if they'll take an envelope off the wall. If you're interested in signing up to help, come talk to me, come talk to Seven, come talk to Marinelle afterwards. You get, what do we say, $10, right? $10 just for helping, actually helping, not just standing in front of the table and being a goblin with your friends. Oh, yes, correct. You get $10 towards camp, thank you. Not just $10 in cash. I'm not doing that. That's crazy. But you get $10 towards camp if you come and sign up with us to work, and then you actually work, all right? And then last but not least, is anybody excited for camp? Hey. Okay. So summer camp is coming up. Registration is open. Some of you guys are already registered, which is sick, but we need more people. We want to take as many people as we can to summer camp this summer. So if you're excited, if you're engaged, if you're excited about going, please sign up. We send out that registration. If you need it again, come and talk to one of us. We'd love to get that to you. If you're worried about finances, if you're worried about not being able to afford it, please come talk to us. We want to help you out, all right? So summer camp registration, it's out. Please sign up. We want you to go to camp. All right. Now I'm going to send you out to small groups. If you want to help greet this week, come talk to me, please. Ready, set, go.